Eagles, and then we have one out of Ogden. Now we have a new one starting out of Provo. So, which is okay if you do like, these teams are going to play against each other in the state, and then we're going to take the best players out of those organizations and make all-star teams out of that, and then they can play against each other, and then the all-stars out of that all-star group become Team Utah, and that's our Tier 1 program, because in the meantime, we just keep diluting it. Every time, and I did it when I was coaching. I was coaching the Eagles, and I thought I had this phenomenal team. I had Nick Halloran, I had Tegan and Net, I had we had all the best players, Faubert and all these guys. And then Park City said, you know what, we're gonna do it this year too, and we'll waive the fees for the best players that we get. Well, that decimated our team. We had one team that would have been competitive AAA or Tier 1, and all of a sudden it got diluted. And when those couple players left, then they were like, well, Eagles aren't going to be as strong. I think the Grizzlies are going to be stronger. So then I lost 2 players of them. So I went from having 14 legitimate AAA players to having 6. And then somebody else had 4. And then somebody else had 4. And, it's sad to see it get diluted like that.
Well, I think that you said something they reacted on right away, because if you have, say, 15 or 20 good players in the state and they compete against each other every day, you don't think they're going to get better. That's the environment that you need to settle in. Another thing was is the fees, right? So what I tried to do was, because they cost money to play hockey, and especially when you need to travel outside the state. And what I tried to do was set up sponsorships for the people that couldn't afford it and make it affordable. And that's was part of the job for those 5 full-time coaches I had on the organization, was to go out and try to get those sponsorships. And that's the reason why we get chatters on board in order to put in quite a bit of money into it to disperse. I mean, it's easy and I think that's the biggest one, find a reasonable way, but create an environment where the players really want to be, and unify those powers and knowledge, I should say, of the coaches and work together. And that's a big key, because there's a lot of egos around there. And one of the most important thing I did when I came in to Utah Hockey was sitting down with the parents and trying to describe them the way and the vision I had of the organization. I said, if you want to be successful, we need to work together, and you as parents are having a huge role in this. And it's lays on you a little bit in the sense of trusting us in the hockey part of anything else. I can have any dialogue and discussion with you guys, but I'm going to stick up for my coaches if it comes down to hockey decisions. But I could be the link between the parents and the coaches, and I really try to be that, absorbing the parents and make them understand. Had frequent meetings with them, explain the process of what's the next step, instead of feeling that the parents were enemies or anything like that, or working against them. I wanted to bring them into the family. I did the same thing with the national teams, actually, with the Swedish National. I invited parents under 18 and had parents discussions on how they can help the players on becoming the next level, and try to get them on board and make them understand what we were all about. So I think to be successful, I think education is going to be huge. I think whatever happened 10 years ago is not important right now. We need to move on. Find those people that really want to further hockey and work together in that sense. I think it's going to be hugely important. And I think we're almost there. When I left, was very close to that kind of family, or whatever you want to call it. And there's also, you got to understand that there's choices that the parents need to make if they're moving somewhere to another state or like that. Whatever you feel is best for your son or daughter to move somewhere else, we respect that, and not hold it against them, because they're always trying to make whatever the best decision for them, and be happy that you had them for 1 or 2 years, So I think there's a lot of check marks there, and there was a lot of good people here that I just wish if I could get them to work together a little bit more, we would have been there. Especially last couple of years I was here.
Yeah. And I think that's the case now too. There are a lot of good people and a lot of good people involved. What's your take on year-round hockey players for youth guys like 8 to 12 years old? Are you all in on play hockey all year, or do you want to play soccer and baseball and or just taking some time off?
I'm a firm believer in playing a lot of sports, exposed to a lot of sports. I believe in create the the athlete first and hockey player second to me. Like, have the athlete. I think this is hugely important. I don't mind if kids want to skate in the summer and further their hockey career, if that's the interest, that's what they want to do. But I think you as a parent, if you want to have the athlete, you need to expose them to different sports, and I think that's really, really important, and not just for hockey's sake or for the hockey education, but also for them, not just there's only one thing they're holding on to. They need more stuff to be involved in, and I think just the balance in the kid's life is better that way as well, and meet different people and all that stuff, because the social aspects of this is huge, obviously.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think it's good to diversify. I ran into a lot of problems with that as a coach too, where I would allow it, and a lot of parents would get mad that I was allowing it. But I also had a son that was playing two sports that, it kind of forced me to allow it a lot. But I also saw the positive sides of that. You mentioned that there are currently no NHL coaches that are Swedish.
No European coaches actually. You have some assistant coaches, and most of them are old NHL players, and being here and obviously build up some kind of a trust with someone that makes the decisions. I think that's and doing a good job. Obviously, to be a coach in NHL, you need to be best of the best, right? So no, right now there are no European coaches, and again I try to challenge a little bit, because there's a lot of good European coaches. I coached against them. I coached against NHL coaches. When we won the World Championships 2017 against Canada in the final, for example, John Cooper was on the Canadian bench. I mean, I coached against those guys in tournaments and stuff like that. So I've been fortunate to coach them against some really good, Finnish coaches, Swedish coaches, Russian coaches, Czech coaches. I mean, they're really good, solid coaches, and I think they can also, if an NHL organization will take that step, I think you can get in a little bit what Tappara did this year, a little bit different kind of hockey, maybe challenging, not playing the same way as everyone else, maybe get a little different approach to it. And again, I was really determined of making this happen in Finland, because you have ups and downs in the season. It's easy to start mistrusting or not trusting what you started, but somewhere along the line, because the organization was so solid and so supportive in what we were doing, you saw the result of it too, and there was a lot of people that really appreciated it, because we played it so different than we're successful with in the past, So, and I think, I think there will be some European coaches that will get an opportunity, that an organization will look outside the box and give them opportunity. Again,
well, I've heard your name come up. Like, when NHL openings, there's been a couple times, this can't be a surprise to you, I heard it on NHL Network, your name is mentioned. Like, have you been interviewed for NHL jobs?
Yes, I have. From, I would say, and head coaching jobs, of course, also some assistant jobs. There's a lot about timing as well. Who's available, who's out there at the same time as you interviewing, maybe some other, big name gets available, and suddenly things changes and stuff like that. So it's a little bit of a timing situation. Us European coaches, and especially the attractive guys that has offers from different organizations, Europe's. I signed my contract with Tappara already in November the year before. Their recruiting season is a little bit different versus here. You have to wait until maybe a month or so before the season starts in the NHL organization. So it's a little bit of a contract situation too.
Right.
So the really attractive coaches in Europe, they get signed up pretty quickly. That was another deal that was attractive with Tappara, that I do have an NHL out with Tappara. That was a big deal for me, and same time signing a long-term deal with Tappara.
Do a lot of leagues have that for their players or for their coaches, where like, hey, if the NHL comes, we get it, like go, and that gives us more exposure too, or?
Yeah, in Europe you have an agreement. The European leagues have an agreement with NHL, so they can. There's some rules that need to be followed, but more or less, if we have a contract with the player and NHL wants them and signs them, they can take them up to a certain date. And that, for example, we had Konsta Helenius that signed with Buffalo a couple of weeks ago, drafted 14th overall this year. He was actually contracted by us, but because the NHL team wants to keep him, he's a first rounder, he can stay with Buffalo. So there's always situations where European leagues have signed an agreement with NHL that NHL can come in and take some of our players. So a little different with coaches. It's not under the same umbrella.
If they don't stay on the NHL team and they're 17, 18 years old, can they come back and play? Because I think one of our goalies plays for Joker at one of the Utah hockey teams.
Yeah.
So is that I'm just a little confused on how it works, because I know how it works. If you're 18, you can go back to your junior team. They don't assign you to the AHL. Is it the same thing? Can they send them back to Europe, or do they have to go to the A?
Just to bring up this example again, so if you draft the first round in NHL draft, CBA, what it states in CBA, or the agreement, I should say, between the National Ice Hockey Association and NHL, if you draft the first round and go in and try out for the NHL team and don't make the NHL team, the team can still assign them to the American League. But if you're second round and lower, they have to. If they don't make the NHL team in the training camp, they have to send them back to Europe.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of difference depending where you're drafted. But there's always deals that happens, situation happens. I mean, if you look at our defensive core, a lot of them have NHL experience, have been exposed to NHL coming back. We have some younger guys that are drafted that will take the step and all that stuff, and we need to understand where in the pecking order we're at. But there's a very, very good hockey in Europe. I feel like we're producing a lot of good players. Obviously, there's some players that they're coming back, either played in the NHL and coming back, there's a lot of excitement with hockey. The hockey interest in Finland is number 1, 2, and 3 when it comes to sports in Finland. It's hockey. Like they love their hockey. Yeah. So that was interesting for me too. Versus in Sweden, I think it's a little 50-50 between soccer and hockey. I think soccer is probably a little bit interest is a little bit higher, but other hot spots in Europe. I mean, I think Germany is gaining huge momentum right now with what they're doing with their pro league. Building brand new arenas and everything else. Czech Republic is building a pretty good league there, and can offer enough monies for good recruitment of players outside Czech Republic. For example, there's other leagues in Europe. Swedish league has been very solid for many years. I have a huge fan interest. If you have an opportunity to come and watch a game in Europe, because the fan interest is unbelievable.
Oh yeah, I have every intention of coming and catching a couple games this year.
Yeah, and you're more welcome to come to our games for sure.
Yeah.
Because it's especially the derbies, but we're averaging close to 10,000 in our games, and some teams in Europe, for example, Bern making the average of 15,000. You have Berlin, for example. I think it's 16,000 or something like that. They're averaging. So, playing in front of more or less. If you look at the soccer games in Europe, that's kind of the same in hockey. Like that's the kind of atmosphere. They're singing along the whole games, and it's a fun atmosphere to work with them for sure.
Yeah, I went to my first European soccer game this year, and it was pretty crazy. Frankfurt and somebody else. It was fun though. It was a lot of excitement and. Yeah, I've seen those with, I got to watch like Nick and those guys play the last couple of years. I'll catch a couple of their games on TV or stream it and just listening to the crowd into it the whole time. Sounds like you'd be exhausted after those games, just even as a fan. What do you think about Utah getting an NHL team? Is this something you ever saw coming? And what kind of impact do you think that's going to have on Utah?
Well, I'm as excited as anyone else because I feel like I'm part of the state. So I'm super excited about Utah getting an opportunity to have it in state instead of traveling somewhere else and catch NHL games. They can actually just go downtown Salt Lake and watch games. I'm super excited about it. What a great opportunity for the whole population of the state of Utah to watch NHL game on a daily basis. And I think we talked about youth hockey and everything else. I think youth hockey is going to gain, obviously, momentum of this as well. I think it's going to be more ice facilities going to be built. Obviously, more kids want to play the sport. Hopefully, the organization realizing this and want to pump in resources into youth hockey in the state, because that's a great way of making sure you have fans coming to the games. Because if you start playing hockey, you either become a hockey player or fans or both. So. And then they can, obviously people are going to come and buy the product of hockey. So if you look at, I've also been down in Texas areas, and I see the impact of Dallas Stars down there when they moved from Minnesota, and they built all those hockey centers around Dallas, and now you see great players coming out of the state of Texas.
Yeah.
Obviously Gretzky moving to California, what a great boom of interest in that state. So hopefully if it can gain the momentum here in Utah, which I know it will, and there's a lot of good hockey people here that should be getting involved in this, and hopefully what we talked about before, that they can have a unified front working together and making sure we create the best environment for our youth here, and look beyond the squabble that happened 10, 15 years ago. I think you have a huge opportunity in producing great players.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's kind of been the template, right? Like even if you look at what happened in Vegas just recently, they went from 450 registered hockey players to 4,000 in 6 years. And we know we're getting another rink immediately. We know there's a rink being built in St. George. We know there's another rink being built just outside of Park City. And those are going to be done within the next 18 months. So I think like maybe 18 years from now, you're going to see a first-round pick out of Utah.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think it's a question of that. I think, again, and they want to stay in those formative years in the state and play here versus going somewhere else where the better opportunities. So, I'm super thrilled for Utah. I obviously personally interested, and maybe come back and retire. I can watch some NHL hockey here as well, and I
don't want you to come back retired. I want you to be a coach on the team. Rikard, what's your biggest accomplishment as a coach?
Oh boy.
I don't mean to put you on the spot. I'm trying to get you a job with our new NHL team. Tell me your top 3 accomplishments.
Well, obviously winning with the national team is unbelievable, but just representing the national team.
And you beat John Cooper, who's really good friends with our owner Ryan Smith. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. No, winning with the national team, again, representing the country is tremendously, privileged for me to be part of. We only won Junior World Championship, believe it or not, twice, and I've been part of when we won 12 in Calgary. That was a huge momentum swing, I think, for Swedish hockey period. Was a big thing, but then other things I'm really proud. I'm proud of what we did here in Utah. I just wish I could have been staying a lot longer, but I can't clone myself and be in 2 different places at the same time. I'm super proud of some players that, again, I'm reconnected with here and there that I've been part of their lives and see them excel into what they're at. But so there's a lot of mixed emotions, a lot of privileges as a coach that to be part of not just winning and losing, because that's the little tip of the iceberg we're seeing, but be part of these young men and even women. I coach some women as well, and see them have success in their lives. That's a big accomplishment for me.
Yeah, that's I talk about it all the time. For me, as a coach, we won some games, we lost some games. Looking back, I remember some of the losses, sure, but what I really remember are the kids, the parents. I had great times with the parents. Made friends for life with a lot of them. I get invited to weddings and college graduations and college games, and just knowing that you had that impact on people. And then I still have guys that I coached 10 years ago that just reached out to me the other day. These kids are Tegan's age. They're like 25, 26 years old, and they're like, hey, let's do an alumni game. Let's get everybody together. Let's get the whole old team back together. And it's just funny to look back at the impact that you can have as a coach on these people, and whether it's at the house level or whether it's at the national level, like you're still having that same impact on raising young people into being adults. And hopefully that's the part where you make the most impact, right?
Yeah, and I think when you're looking at, especially coaching at my level in NHL or whatever, I think a big thing when you get up to our level is the X and O's. You have a plan. Obviously, you need to adapt depending on what kind of team you have and all that stuff. The X and O's are down there. You have the support. You know how the hockey part works. But the biggest thing for me is the leadership. How do you treat people? That's a huge, huge thing for me. And I think sometimes it's being missed. I mean, someone missing the boat. It doesn't matter what level they're at. If you treat the people really well around yourself, I think you can be even harder with them. I think it means a lot for those people that you're around. So the leadership part, man, I'm trying to educate myself. Right now in the summer I go fishing, and I actually went up to Strawberry yesterday. I caught some good fish up in Strawberry. I go fishing, but also trying to educate myself. So I do a lot of research how I can become a better leader, because that's a huge part for me. You're talking about a privilege, but there's also a responsibility that you have. You can also crush dreams, and sometimes that's in our level. Obviously, we have to make decisions of who we're going to keep, who we're going to play, and all that stuff. And so, but you can still treat a person well, even though that you may have to make those decisions. That I'll take pride in that, in the sense of the leadership part of it, because X and O's, I think at a certain level you always have it, But have those players every time they're walking in the locker room I'm involved in, they feel welcome there. They really feel welcome, and they want to do stuff versus don't want to. Because I've been in locker rooms when I played that I don't want to go in there, and I love the sport. I love to be in the locker room, period. But there's also some environments you don't want to be part of. And I think that's a success part for me, the biggest success you have. I think I'm pretty good at creating that environment in every locker room of we want to do something and we want to do it together because we picked a team sport, right? So the leadership part is huge for me as well.
Yeah, it's hugely important. And to build that culture, I was lucky. I always had kids that just love the sport as much as I love the sport and love to play it. And somehow they made practices more fun. They just went in with the right attitude. I was lucky. I think I raised my kids that way. I listened to my daughter going through when she went through basic training, and she would talk about, what some of the challenges they went through. And she's like, today we get to do this. We get to do this 6-mile hike with a backpack, and we can go straight. And if we tear, we go through these bushes and stuff. We're not on trails. And if they tear our pants or whatever, they'll just give us more pants. And her attitude about the whole thing with, hey, this is a great opportunity. Not many people get to just, be this rugged or do these things or play with $1 million tanks or, all this stuff that, I know you watch movies and people think that part sucks. Yeah. But if you look at it right, and if you have the right culture and you have the right, and sometimes it's one player and sometimes it's two players, sometimes it's the coach. And if we knew how to create it right, then we'd win every year, right? Every year we'd be champions, but there's a lot of balance that comes to it. It's fun to man. I could listen to you talk all day, and I'd love to learn more about leadership from you. I absorb that stuff like crazy too. It's important in my real world as a captain of a fire department. Just trying to.
How about I'll send you some of the research, because the research is out there, and it's just if the willingness to find it and willingness to go outside the traditional hockey box, because the way I was coached, that's not the way that really. I mean, there's some good stuff. Don't get me wrong. They build a lot of character and stuff, but. The research is out there. Just do the research of when it comes to leadership. How do you get people to work together? I'm super intrigued by it, because when I start coaching again, I think we're all doing that. It's so easy to put the whistle on, and I played, so I know, right? Yeah. And then if a player comes up and asks you a question, you tell them exactly what they should do because I know. And then you're black and white, right? We need to be black and white. This is the easier world to live in. And the older I get, the more I understand that, hey, listen, maybe I can learn something from the players too, by asking questions. What's so wrong for someone in my position to ask questions to my assistant coaches, to staff, to players, and by getting that information that you maybe didn't get, now we can make a more well-rounded decision, because at the end of the day, I need to make decisions, right? And I think I learned a lot from myself, but also doing research, but also being in an environment and trying different new stuff, not just being in the same spot every year and doing the same thing. Plus I get bored, but trying new stuff and trying to be challenging, be in a challenging environment with the staff, the coaches and the players. Yeah,
the best leaders are humble, they're vulnerable, they're willing to ask questions and willing to say, I don't know.
So you've done the research?
Well, I've done a lot of research. I've read a lot. Well, my wife and daughter won't let me say that I've read a book because I listen to all of them. But I've listened to a lot of books, and then obviously through the fire department, I go through tons of leadership training, tons. And that's basically what it comes down to, is just be vulnerable and listen to people talk. You don't have to know the answer. But in my world, my hockey world, that's fine. But in the paramedic world, you're supposed to know everything. You're supposed to say, I know exactly what to do. But there's actually more, there's more strength in saying, you know what, I don't know. Let's kind of take a poll. I'm going to make the final decision, but am I missing anything? Is there anything anybody else is seeing? And there's no, like, if it's okay to do that as a paramedic in a life and death situation, which most of them are, and if it's okay to do it then, it's definitely okay to do it as a coach. It's definitely okay to take a second.
And you brought up a great point there, Jay, that it gets to a point where a coach needs to make a decision, right? Like even on the bench, it needs to be a quick decision. But I think and obviously being a paramedic, you have to make life and death decisions. But until that point, obviously you need to learn and try to be better. And suddenly when you're making that decision, hopefully you're making better decisions, because every decision we make is not always the right decision, right? But I think you're making a better decision because until that point when you actually have to make a decision, you actually listen to people, you learn from different perspectives. We have something for, just bring up example with coach trying to be listening. After I've been working with neuroscience, a few people, but also with some in the real world, like you said, life and death situations, and U.S. Marines, for example, after they go on a mission, they have something called after action review, which I'm sure you haven't heard of.
A hot wash, yep.
We do it after every game. Like it's not a life and death decisions, of course not. But it's also important for me to hear from the player's point of view. So what I do is the day after we're sitting down, and I said, okay, guys, what happened? So it's a flat organization. I sit down. I'm not over them. I'm sitting down and say, okay, what happened? So I can hear their point of view. And obviously based on what they're saying, I have my truth. Obviously, I'm the coach, and I have the video and everything ready to go, and I give them some information and further and get better and all that stuff. But before that, I can hear from some of the guys, and you'd be surprised. They're not dummies.
Right.
They know what's going on, and you get some feedback back from those guys. But also, by them having the voice, they feel responsibility of the group, right? They feel a responsibility of, next time I need to step up even more because I just raised my voice in this situation, right? So they feel even more responsible when we're stepping on the ice afterwards. So we have a completely flat organization. We have no ranks, exactly what it is in the U.S. Marines. Everyone can say anything from other perspective, can even have a dialogue within the locker room. And then going to get to the point later on that I have to make a decision. Obviously, I got to make sure who's playing with whom and all that stuff. But I think the players feel a value in that, in the sense of I am responsible, I have an ownership in this. And those are key things if we want to have a successful team, I feel.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And someday we're going to have to talk about, we'll have to have you on another episode or something, because I think it's important what you just said as far as who's going to play with whom and where and when. It's not like it used to be. It's not all black and white. It's not, a lot of people here are under the impression that you just bring in every superstar forward you get and you just put them all on the ice at the same time, instead of having, like the old saying, it takes a lot of tradesmen to build a house, right? You got to have the plumber, you got to have the electrician, so you got to have the plugger, you got to have the guy that's going to be strong in front of the net, you got to have somebody to win face-offs. Someday we'll have to break all that down, because I think what I'm finding is a lot of people are using this show to learn about coaching and to learn about, because they're getting into hockey more, and this is their resource.
And I've been in that position. I brought in all the superstars for World Cup, for example, 2016. That was my first job for the Swedish team as a head coach, and I can pick anyone from the NHL, like more or less. So I've been there, and now how am I going to find a role for everyone? Bringing all those superstars. First of all, you have to turn superstars away from playing on that team. How do you do that? And secondly, now when you have all the superstars in the locker room, who's going to play and with whom? And how much time are they going to get, and all that stuff. So I've been in those situations, and I always refer back to, the well-grounded of getting as much information, but having a dialogue, discuss, talk, explain. Not always the explanation is going to be something the player wants to hear, but I think they appreciate you taking your time of explaining your thought process and how you land in different goals. I think the player is going to have a better understanding in the process of what you're doing, and I think you have more buy-in in that sense. So I've been in that, and obviously a very short period of time, but it was an unbelievable experience, and what a great challenge for me as my first head coaching job with the national team is to bring on the World Cup.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. Rikard, thank you so much for your time. That's about the length that people will listen to a podcast. I'd love to have you on again. I'd love to hear that you get hired on and one of your next. I know you're excited about coaching in Finland, but I'd love to see you come back to Utah. I'd love to see you be part of our NHL team, and I'd love to have your influence back on this market. The influence you had in those 5 years, you put a lot of our kids into NCAA programs that probably wouldn't have been there. And I hope you realize that, because we realize that and we appreciate it. I know they appreciate it, obviously. So if we can get a guy like you to stick around and coach more in Utah, and I know it's going to take the NHL to do it because that's got to be your next step, then hopefully it's with us.
Would love to. I would love to be part of this.
All right. That's Rikard Grönborg. I'm Jay Stevens, and that is the Utah Puck Report.